Ever since the first time I saw Deadpool, I've hoped someone would make this version of Colossus in action figure form, but does this one live up to the 8-year wait? Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Today we're taking a look at the Marvel Legends Deadpool Legacy Collection Deluxe Colossus by Hasbro. Starting with the packaging, and Peter comes in an extra wide deluxe style window box. I love how Colossus is so big he actually has to crouch down in that box. Deadpool Legacy Collection down here. Marvel's Colossus on the side. Picture of him on the spine. Deadpool logo up top. UPC on the bottom. And then flipping around back we get the full picture, a bio, and other available figures. It's funny how they show Deadpool when he's just an accessory for Logan. This is pretty much everything I look for in a box. So for packaging, Peter Rasputin gets 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and Colossus stands at 7.5 inches or 19.5 centimeters and is a completely new sculpt. Colossus is one of my favorite X-Men characters. Suffice it to say, I wasn't exactly over the moon with his appearances in X2 and X-Men The Last Stand. You can only imagine my delight at the comics accurate interpretation that Deadpool gave us. Well, leastways his appearance. Personality wise, they made him more of a no fun neg, but between the two movies it serves a pretty nice character arc. This isn't a criticism of the figure, but I do wish the costume was a bit more comics accurate. I'm not necessarily saying all the bare skin or these fabulous boots, but if this could have been a nice dark red with a yellow stripe running down the center, it would have been perfect. My guess is that because Deadpool's all in red, they didn't want to make him too similar. Still, seeing how great Wolverine looked, it's hard not to imagine. Here, Hasbro has really surprised me. This figure is so screen accurate that if you told me they had the actual digital model from the movie, I'd totally believe it. I also really appreciate the contrasting textures. For example, this very lifelike leather look. If I did have one criticism, it would be that the torso naturally wants to click forward and hide this seam, but that's about as minor of a complaint as you can possibly have. Working our way down the suit, and Colossus has a crisp silver X-Men emblazoned belt buckle and a pair of very practical pockets on each one of his pant legs. Very good job sculpting the straps and buckles and zippers. Part of me wants to say it would be nice if there was extra paint in there, but I honestly don't know if there was in the movie. On the subject of paint apps, let's talk about the arms. Hasbro actually went the extra mile to punch in some extra paint for the grooves of his armored skin. Comparing it to their regular Colossus, you can see what a difference that makes. There is unfortunately the tiniest bit of paint slop on mine, as well as whatever it is that's going on over here, but that's a problem unique to my specific copy. Overall though, this is pretty top shelf, especially when you factor in that half the time Hasbro won't even paint Spider-Man's web lines. And that's Spider-Man! Bottom line, this figure looks great, the likeness is spot on, and I really appreciate the small touches like painting in the grooves. For presentation, I'm giving Colossus 5 points. Moving on to Posability, and this rough and tumble Rusky did come packed with a couple of pretty cool surprises. From the top, and I'm happy to see his head is on a ball joint and a disc swivel. I'm also happy to see that they continued the grooves in that joint. Thanks to that swivel, he can look all the way up, no doubt a juggernaut towering over him. Here's Colossus looking straight and hanging his head in disappointment at Wade's terrible choices. The downside of the disc swivel is you don't get the same kind of tilt as you would with a dumbbell, but at least you have side to side. Moving down, and it's astonishing how high this X-Man can raise his arm. Not only that, but instead of a butterfly joint, they gave him a wibbly-wobbly rotator cuff like a McFarlane figure. I did not see that coming. Complete rotation, of course, with some very clicky detents in there. Moving on down, and he has bicep swivel, as well as pinless double-jointed elbows with a very deep bend considering how thick those arms are. And then at the ends of those arms, the wrists can swivel and hinge either up or down, and just like the neck joint, the grooves have been continued on the joint. Moving to the middle, and Movie Colossus has an ab crunch and a waist swivel. He can only arch back this far, which is pretty negligible. For context, here he is standing straight, and even that hunch forward isn't worth riding home to Russia with love. Since there's no diaphragm, he doesn't get any kind of tilt, but Colossus can twist. Below the buckle, and Colossus has ball-jointed hips. He can kick in the ballpark of 45 degrees, and split this wide. Moving on down is a thigh cut partially concealed by this pocket. Similar to the arms, and the double-jointed knees have a deep bend despite how bulky they are. And one thing I was very pleased to see is a Colossus has boot cut. Lastly, and moving all the way down, Peter's ankles can hinge, and like Colossus, from Deadpool's stick-in-the-mud nanny to a fully fledged member of X-Force, pivot. Certain aspects like the neck and arms are really good. I also really like the McFarlane-esque shoulder articulation, but that ab crunch is practically useless. For Posability, I'm giving Colossus 4 points. Moving on to playability, and what Colossus lacks in quantity of accessories, he more than makes up for in quality. Firstly, we have this alternate grimacing head. This is great for either fighting or being frustrated with Deadpool, and I love how comics accurate it is. Throughout the video so far, we've been admiring Colossus's balled up fists, but he also comes with a pair of relaxed ones. Those are good for chilling around the mansion, or for holding this official X-Men rulebook, complete with rules beautifully stamped on the tiny pages. It's a small thing, both literally and figuratively, but is exactly the kind of thing I love to see. The only other accessories I would have liked would have been a pair of even wider open hands for grappling. But playability is more than just big hands and tiny books. It's also about how well your figure plays with others. For the only other live-action Colossus figure, and here we have Daniel Cudmore as he appeared in X-Men The Last Stand. Otherwise, and for some comic-style Colossuses, and here's X-Men Classic by Toy Biz, Marvel Select by Diamond Toys, the 80 Years Juggernaut 2-pack version, and the Age of Apocalypse Build-A-Figure. That said, I don't have modern Colossus, but I do have Cyber, who was built off his body. Otherwise, for another Deadpool Legacy Collection figure, and here we have Logan, and most importantly, Deadpool himself. Switching over to comics though, and here we have the Hydro Bob 2-pack version, as well as Cable, but for some X-Men options, and here's 90s and astonishing versions of Cyclops, 90s and astonishing versions of Wolverine, 90s and modern versions of Rogue, and depending on your preferred Cyclops love interest, 90s Jean, or astonishing Emma. For the most personal comparison for Peter, however, and here is his sister, Ilyana Rasputin, also known as Magic. If only we could have gotten an Anya Taylor-Joy figure of her to go with this guy. For just a couple of villains though, and here's Omega Red, as well as the Build-A-Figure version of Juggernaut, and my favorite, Marvel Select. Hasbro, if you're listening, please make the Deadpool 2 version, even if you have to do it as an open pre-order like Dragon Man or the 97 Sentinel. For a relative scale comparison, here's Colossus with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is winding Stealth Iron Man up for the Fastball Special. Come on, Forbin Project. Let her rip. What's great about the movie Colossus is that he's so comics accurate you could put him in your comic or movie display. It really just boils down to how open you are to him having a different costume. Combined with a couple of fun, thoughtful accessories for playability, I'm giving Colossus 4 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. Colossus is a deluxe release which will set you back $39.99. Comparing Colossus for a moment to Venompool, that was only $34.99, but that figure was complete reuse, whereas this is all new for only $4 extra bucks. Definitely the upper limit of what I'd be willing to pay, but I'm happy I have it, and hopefully this helped you figure out if it's worth it to you. For price, I'm giving Colossus 4 points, averaging out to a pretty good total, a 4.4 out of 5. For a couple of other videos you might enjoy, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice and have fun.